Hi, and welcome to Coaching Unveiled. I'm James Fenimore from the Heart Posture Coaching, joined as always by Jason Donahue from Level Up Fusion Coaching. Jason, how are you?
Hey, doing great. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. We finished up keeping the main thing the main thing. So now we want to continue on that theme and we want to make sure we're optimizing the right thing. So Jason, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I think this is a great carry on from what we previously talked about because at times, are we optimizing the wrong thing in the sake of, but that was the main thing I'm focusing on. So, what we're really talking about today is what's the goal behind the goal? Or another way of saying it is the why the main thing is the main thing. I think that people can relate to that they've worked really hard, they had a goal, they achieved the goal, only to find that it's an empty achievement. And they feel like, man, I missed something more. And what happens is we start to confuse metrics over mission. And I know we're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but what are your first thoughts about this?
Yeah, so you had a great, a lot of great points there, but like keeping the main thing was so important. But when the main thing gets kind of lost in the sauce of why you're doing it, then all of a sudden it becomes like you kind of idolize it and then you forget the whole purpose of your mission. And now you're chasing a metric, you're chasing a number, you're chasing an end goal, and this whole middle piece becomes kind of soulless in a way, and you're not really there, you're not present, you're just looking at that end result. And look, that's where mistakes happen. That's where you might do things you might not be proud of to get to that goal, and you might actually do things that are even could be unethical. That's where people could lose themselves sometimes. So when you remember the why and let that drive you to your main thing, that's where your success will happen.
Yeah, very much so. And I do think that, for example, I think we've all been in situations where somebody has approached us after we've purchased a product or a service, and they said, "Well, we do have this rating system. I'd appreciate if you give me a 5 star." And we don't feel that that's authentic. That's where the metric becomes bigger than the mission, and it should be the other way around. A couple of folks that I've had the privilege of coaching, they're automobile dealership leaders. And one of the things that they will receive feedback at times on is this push for their salespeople to customers about, well, I'd appreciate a 5 star rating. I appreciate a 5 star rating. But what if it wasn't a 5 star experience? One of the things I think we fall trapped to at times, and I like how you use the term we idolize some of these metrics, is that we equate that 5 stars out of five is the only definition of acceptable. But are we measuring to impress or are we measuring to improve? That's the goal behind the goal. If it isn't a 5 star experience, tell us why. Let us know why. I've had experiences being in restaurants where an owner will come out and go to table and really ask, how's the food? And somebody will kind of give a Scooby-Doo look like, well, hey, tell me about it. And they'll ask for the feedback and say, we'll comp you this whole meal because we appreciate your feedback. That's somebody who really wants to be better by keeping the main thing, and the mission behind it. But we get lost at times on that. How about your thoughts?
It's really simple. As a business owner, or many businesses, there are two ways to look at this 5 star review, like you just mentioned. If I had an employee that got 10 5 star reviews because they asked for them, and I had another employee that got 8 5 star reviews and 2 3 star reviews, or just 8 5 star reviews and just no other reviews, and they both had 10, and the other guys just never gave them reviews, I would probably prefer the person that ate because he wasn't asking for them, as opposed to the person that actually just like drove the ask, because I don't believe them. I just believe, guy worked okay. I know he relies on this and his bosses, are going to give him promotions and raises based on the 5 star review. So let's just give it to him because we're nice people. But that does nothing for me as the owner. It doesn't help me improve my people. It doesn't help me improve the experience for my customer. And it doesn't help me improve the overall business. So honesty, and brutal honesty at that, is what's most important. And that's keeping the experience, the middle portion, the main thing, not the end result now. So, yes, we have our main thing, selling the car in
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
instance, selling the service. But really, the experience is also the main thing in that instance because you want them to come back and buy another one. Nobody has a
Mhm.
car that lasts forever. We probably used to back in the 50s, but when we realized that, this isn't a money making machine, they started making cars that only last you 3, 4 years.
Mhm.
So they want you to come back. They need you to come back. So a 5-star review, if it doesn't mean anything, means nothing. But in the terms of the customer versus the client, the customer versus the employee relationship, what I would much rather hear is, hey, you're going to get a survey. It's important for my job, but I need you to be honest. And I hope this was an amazing experience for you. And if it wasn't, tell me how I could do better because I want to do better. First of all, even if that person was at like an 80%, just by saying that, you're probably going to give them a 5-star review anyway because you're like, man, this guy really does want to do better. But maybe there's a comment section where I could say, guy was amazing, but what I would have liked to have seen was hotter coffee or something
Yeah,
like that, and give a little extra feedback. But that's what you want to see. Somebody that, yeah, you're going to get a review. Be honest because I want to improve. And as a customer, I hear that. Even if I didn't have a great experience, I want to come back because I know they're constantly improving instead of browbeating me into a 5-star review.
that's right. That's right. Because in those situations, the metrics become the misdirection. And I think again, when we take a look at the example of health, a lot of people equate health and wellness to how much do I weigh? And there were whole television shows that were based on this. The Biggest Loser, for example, was based on this, that the metric of success was pounds lost. But I think you and I both know people in life, and I'm sure people who listen and watch this know people in life too, that they had thinner friends or people who lost weight, but they weren't healthy. In fact, they became more unhealthy. But because they focused on the one metric, not the mission, that metric misdirected them toward what they thought was goal attainment. And actually, what it was goal gap right there. I think in business, you and I both come from business. We're both executives. We do business coaching with other things too. Is that companies can perform financially, but they're killing their people in the process. They're literally what John Maxwell would talk about of you're cutting open the goose that lays the golden eggs, trying to find more eggs in it, but you just killed the goose. But this is where, yep, one metric looks great, but we're not paying attention to the mission about what helped us get there. So, there's where we've got to recognize and challenge ourselves so we don't fall into this trap like you were talking about.
Yeah. The metrics on the mission is such a great way to look at it because I could tell you when I used to go on weight loss journeys as a younger man, I would actually stop lifting weights because I knew that muscle weighed more than fat. And I'm like, I'm going to just lose the fat first and just focus on the number on the scale. And I won't lift any weights because I don't want to gain any more muscle. And that's going to, I won't think I'm making any progress because if I'm gaining muscle, the number's not going to. And this is the mental gymnastics I would play with myself because I was idolicizing the metric instead of the mission. The mission was never to lose weight, it was to get healthy. And I reversed it. And that is where I would then fail truly because now it's like, okay, now I'm yo-yoing and doing all the wrong things you do when you diet. Starting with dieting, but that's another story for another podcast. So now I know, no, if the mission is to get healthy, it's like, I didn't have a great lunch today, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to have a good workout. I'm going to feel better about myself. And now I know that I'm being at least productive. Not that, oh no, I have now ate a bad lunch that would maybe tack on a quarter of a pound on the scale tomorrow if I'm idolicizing the scale. And now I'm going to go lift weights and gain more muscle. This is terrible. What am I going to do? No, I'm going to know in my heart that the mission was to get healthy. Going to the gym helps me on that mission, and it's not what's on the scale.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love the examples. Everything that can be measured can be managed, but the question is it important to be managed? Is that really the thing that reflects back to the value? And again, the example you just gave, the value was health. The question that we ask is this measurement really indicative of what my value is? That's where teams, individuals can stop and check themselves. Am I on this path of alignment, or am I just doing something that's easy because that's the simple metric? Again, I'm all for biohacking markers, very much for it. But there are some that just don't make sense to track because number one, I don't know what to do with it. Number two, what is that definition of wellness that's within it? And then how do I manage it, honestly, on some of them to be able to move forward? Mentioning diet a moment ago, isn't it interesting? The first three letters of diet are DIE. And that's the way that people really feel when they're on this versus somebody who has a value mission about, I have a food philosophy that I want to be able to eat to live, not live to eat. And here's what this means. That's a radical different approach about the main thing being the main thing with mission or being in the illusion of progress through metrics.
Yeah. So when it comes to metrics, there's a very famous line in the Bible that gets so twisted and turned, and people like to say this: money is the root of all evil. That is not the line in the Bible. Spoiler alert, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. Same goes for data. Okay, data is wonderful, but if data becomes your end all be all, data also doesn't have something that humans do have, and that is a soul. So if you just become data driven and metric driven, you are now becoming a soulless executive, company, five-star asker person, whatever it is, that's what you've become. And I got to tell you, those are the businesses that don't last because they just all of a sudden don't have a soul. There's no amount of marketing and PR that is going to save you from that. But if you now take the data and use it as a tool, just like you could use money as a tool, and you don't love and idolaze money, you don't love and idolaze the data, and you use it as a tool because that's what it is, then it can help you get to your why and to your main thing. So it all is a matter of references. We are not killing data here. Data is so crucial to everything we do, but what is it doing? Like you said, people, the data is great, the numbers look great, but you're killing your people. Not great. The car salesperson has 55-star reviews, but what did they do to get them? Begged, pleaded, and basically forced the person to hit the 5-star before they left and signed the contract. That's not a great look, but the guy looks wonderful according to the data. So always go back to how are we doing with this data? What are we doing with it? And how did we obtain it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great way of bridging into the conclusion is, so how do we coach this drift? And, so part of it is, again, when we've identified what the main thing is, so what's the goal of the main thing? The next question, what's the goal of the goal? Of that, and then being able to challenge yourself, are there alternate ways I can achieve this goal of the goal versus just this one? So again, on health, is it just about pounds lost, gain? No, there's other biomarkers that are very important. In business functioning, is it just about revenue? No, it's also about employee engagement. What else can I do? Customer satisfaction. Yes. What else can I do? That's how we can start challenging ourselves and lift us back into mission, not misdirected metrics.
Yeah. Reflection is always key. I mean, that's something we talk about so often here, right? Like, where are we at with the whole big picture? Because we do get lost in the sauce. I mean, how do you not? We work long hours. We're in there with a lot of people that are all asking for different things from us, whether it's a customer, whether it's our boss, whether it's a coworker. And it is easy to just say, that's what we got to get to. That's the objective. That's the goal. So if you could have a little discernment, take a deep breath, have some time to really reflect on the overall picture and say, hey, these are our values, these are our guidelines. That's why the companies that really have that why, they have their values, they know what they are, and they make that the backbone of everything they do are so successful. And the companies that just say, we got to hit our quarterly numbers or we got to do this, and they're fly-by-night companies. They change constantly. But if they're those generational companies, they're shrouded in values, create, engineer, whatever they become, that just brings everybody back to the main thing.
Yes. Excellent point, I think, for us to be able to end that. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with this? Are there other traps that are present, maybe in your personal life, the life of others or teams you're part of, that would be valuable for you to be able to share with us and with others along the way? And so we always invite your direct messages, and we thank you again for your attendance and giving us your attention.
See you next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.